Jonathan Kinloch Show. Today on the Jonathan Kinloch Show, we have Eric Sabree, Deputy Treasurer of Land Management. We're going to have a conversation with Eric Sabree about the stages and the issues that are surrounding foreclosure in Wayne County, and also to share with you information that is important to you. We will also have a conversation with the Deputy Treasurer regarding an auction, an online auction that will be taking place in October. It's your opportunity to be a part of the process and potentially owning some real estate, a lot of real estate opportunity here in Wayne County. So when we come back, we're going to have a conversation with Eric Sabree, Deputy Treasurer, Land Management for Wayne County. Welcome back to the Jonathan Kinloch Show. Many offices in Wayne County, people are familiar with the titles. They're familiar with the sheriff, they're familiar with the county executive, the prosecutor, treasurer, but do you actually understand the duties and functions of those offices? Well, here on today's show, we have Eric Sabree, who is the Deputy Treasurer for Land Management in Wayne County. And I want to start off our conversation with basically asking you, what is the Office of Treasurer and the responsibilities of this office?
Well, Jonathan, thanks for inviting me on the show. On behalf of our Treasurer, Raymond Wojtowicz, pleased to come on the show and share with you some of the things that we do in the Treasurer's office.
And there's a lot of things that you do in the Treasurer's office.
Yes. The Treasurer collects delinquent taxes and is known for that, but also the Treasurer invests the county's money. The Treasurer also issues payroll checks, pays vendors, and the main function of the Treasurer's office is to collect the taxes, delinquent taxes.
Now, let me ask you, because taxes is a big issue for many residents, and the issue of foreclosure. We're hearing a lot about foreclosure, and let's be clear. When we say foreclosure, the foreclosing that the county deals with has nothing to deal with bank foreclosure. So you can't assist or you don't deal with bank foreclosures. Let's make that clear.
No, this is tax foreclosures we're talking about. People who are delinquent in their taxes for at least 3 years could face foreclosure. And when I say could face foreclosure, because all the possible parcels that could go into foreclosure are not foreclosed upon because it's just too many.
Wow.
We could have foreclosed, for instance, Wayne County Treasurer's Office could have foreclosed on 90,000 parcels this year. Some of them were vacant lots. They may have owed $30, $100, or $50, or over a period of time, this amount could become, with interest and penalty, up to $500, small amounts of dollars considering. So we've sent notices out to 42,000 individuals this year. We could have foreclosed on 90,000.
But let me ask you this. A lot of folks are faced with tough economic circumstances because of layoffs and the high unemployment here in Michigan. Why doesn't the Treasurer Office actually take that into consideration, and particularly with the timing of these foreclosures? I mean, do you have any leeway when it comes to these foreclosures? Are you responsible for setting the guidelines of how and when you actually foreclose?
Well, the Treasurer is mandated by state law. The Public Act 123 really tells us all the steps that the Treasurer's Office.
So there's no way around it?
No, but we do have some programs that we use to help the taxpayer.
But before we get into the programs, let's actually talk about the stages. You know, how do individuals first find themselves in a position of having their properties foreclosed on, and then I would like to talk to you about the opportunities, if there are any, to actually prevent that from happening or getting some assistance.
What happens first is the cities collected their current taxes. All the municipalities in Wayne County collect their current taxes. And after a year, when they're unable to collect those taxes, they forward those taxes to the county as delinquent taxes. Then what happens, the county goes out and borrows money on the market to the tune of, I think it was recently $260 million the past year, and forwards the municipalities 100% of their delinquencies. It's called the Delinquent Tax Revolving Fund.
And then
And we go and collect on all the delinquent taxes that we receive from the cities. But they're made whole so that all the government services can continue. The libraries continue to open, and the community college can continue to serve the Wayne County residents. And as police, fire, all the services that the cities need to implement can continue.
But but Eric, a lot of folks find themselves in a position of not being able to pay their taxes because I don't know if you, well, I'm sure you have seen some of these assessments. These assessments are like, they're all over the place. I mean, you could have one property owner paying $2,000 in property taxes, and then you have another person who lives right next door paying $500. And I don't understand this. Why do you have this disparity between values in communities? Why aren't you all addressing that?
Well, the assessments are done through the cities. The city's assessor's office makes the assessment of the taxes. We don't have anything to do with how much the taxes are. All we do
so
is...
you're saying the treasurer's office has nothing to do with setting...
the taxes. We collect the delinquent taxes. Whatever the city doesn't collect, they give to us.
So the city has a responsibility in this process of collecting taxes as well.
And there's an opportunity for people to challenge their assessment every year. I don't know what it is in each city, but in the city of Detroit, it's between February 1st and February 15th. You have to go to the assessor's office, or you can do it by mail. It's room 804 in the Coleman A. Young Municipal Center. And once you challenge your assessment, if you don't agree with what their response is, then you can go to the Board of Review in March, which is again with the city.
So there's a process to challenge or appeal it administratively within administration, and then
if you get the response right there in March, they'll usually give you your response at the table when you have your hearing. And if you're not satisfied, you can appeal to the Michigan Tax Tribunal in Lansing.
So as these appeals are transpiring, let me ask you, is there a suspension, a hold on previous assessments, or what happens? Do you still have to pay those taxes while you're appealing?
What happens, that's a very good question, because the state tax tribunal can go back up to 3 years. But they don't have to, but they can go back as far as 3 years. A lot of times they'll go back 1 year or two, the current year, but the city is only addressing that current year. They're only addressing, for instance, if you went this past February, they were addressing 2012 assessments. They weren't addressing the 2011. So in order for the 2011 to be addressed, you'd have to go to the Michigan Tax Tribunal.
Well, let me ask you this. Is there something, I mean, I really don't get it. You have a government that's supposed to be of the people, by the people, and for the people. You have all of these interests and things added to the burden on these folks who already can't pay the principal on their property taxes, and then they load it with all of these interests. I mean, why would the legislature not take that in consideration, the impact that these interests are bearing on property owners?
There's a tremendous effort, and by our office, through our treasurer, Raymond Wojtowicz, and our chief deputy, David Szymanski, they have been working with the legislature to lower interest rates. And there's a bill currently in one of the committees, I believe, in the House, to lower the interest rate. But many of the counties don't support lowering the interest rate because they depend on that money for their budget. But the problem is so acute here in Wayne County that it buries individuals. There's interest and penalty, but we have no authority over it because it's state law. We can't. Many taxpayers will come in and say, "Well, I'll pay the tax, but I want to get rid of the interest and penalty." Well, it can't be done. It has to be.
So you can't separate. So you can't.
It has to be legislatively addressed. And another factor that is involved here is the banks that we borrow the money from. They're very concerned too. They loan us money to the tune of $250 million. They want to make sure that we can pay them back.
But let me ask you, there's a thing, but that's another discussion for governments. There's a chargeback that's charged back to local governments because you fronted the money.
Right, what we don't collect in 2 years, we go back and charge them. That's why the auction that we're going to talk about in a few minutes is important. And that's why the extreme efforts we make to collect the taxes. We work with individuals, but we have to let them know that if you don't pay your taxes, we're obligated to take your property to the auction. Wow. Because the state law says we have to have auctions.
So we're going to talk about this whole issue as it relates to the auction that will be taking place in October. On the other side of the break. Welcome back to the Jonathan Kinloch Show. Having a conversation with Eric Sabree, Deputy Treasurer, Land Management for the County of Wayne. And before the break, we were talking about the stages of foreclosure. But what I wanted to be clear with my viewers on is the point of assessments and values. Yes. So, because a lot of folks believe that the Treasurer's Office, who is responsible for foreclosing on properties after folks have not, worked out an arrangement or paid their back property taxes, that you actually set the values and assessments for these properties.
Yes, I realize that. We deal with thousands of people every year who come, by the time they come to our office, they're already upset because the taxes are behind. So they blame us for everything. And we have to explain to them. We say we're not trying to point fingers at the cities or anything, but they do set the tax rate. They're the ones that assess the taxes, the property values. All we do is collect delinquent taxes. If the cities collected all their current taxes, we wouldn't have any taxes to collect.
But as we were saying earlier, we were just having some dialogue about the crazy assessments in these local communities. I know they have to hear complaints because after they contact you about these assessments, I'm sure you send them right back to their local communities when it comes to the issue of setting assessments. So why aren't there more of a move in these local communities, especially the city of Detroit, to fix these assessments?
Well, I can tell you, the Michigan Tax Tribunal is backed up years with cases.
Wow.
It'd be a good conversation to even go up to some of the hearings. In Lansing.
Okay, I might
what goes on up at the hearings. You see what kind of hearings that the tax tribunal has, because they're lowering taxes all over the state of Michigan.
So it's not just an issue here in southeastern Michigan, it's all over the state as far as the setting of assessments and value. So that's very interesting. So we talked about the stages that are involved in a person actually getting to the point of having their properties foreclosed on. Let's talk about opportunities that property owners might have in having a conversation with the Treasurer's Office about assisting them with this plight.
Once the person realizes that they're behind in their taxes, especially if they're approaching the third year of delinquency, which is foreclosure. The first year is called delinquent, the second year is forfeiture, and the third year is foreclosure. We're heading to a foreclosure. Once they get a notice from us, we have to go out and notify everyone. And we usually put a notice on their door unless we personally serve the person who's there. And we take a picture of it because many people tell us that we never did it.
So you hand them to take a picture?
We hand them take a picture of the notice if we leave it on the door.
Oh, okay, right.
And we file an affidavit.
I thought you handed it to them to take a picture.
Some people like to have their picture taken. But anyway, we do this as part of our requirement to serve the individuals. Once they realize that they're in danger of foreclosure, then we have show cause hearings. They can come into the office individually, or they can come to the show cause hearings where we explain to them, if you don't have a reason why we shouldn't foreclose on you, then your property is going to be foreclosed.
So what are some of the reasons that you actually will take into consideration, and what will you do?
Sometimes we have people who are having disputes. For instance, the water bills are part of the taxes now.
Okay.
The water bills from cities get forwarded, put in with the taxes, and get forwarded to delinquent water bills. So if someone has a delinquent water bill, they'll often say, I paid my taxes, but there's a dispute with the water department.
So that still can trigger and put you in foreclosure.
Exactly.
wow.
So sometimes we can come in and we get involved with the water department, but they have to do the work. They have to go over and try to resolve the dispute.
What are some of the other items that are not property related that can find themselves? I know a judgment and something like that, but a civil judgment. But what are some of the other issues that could actually affect?
Well, the trash pickup in the city of Detroit comes over only for 1 year. It won't affect foreclosure. But water is the only thing that
That's the only okay.
added to the taxes. But the interest and penalty, of course, it increases the bill. If you have a $1,000 water bill added to your taxes, then the interest and penalty is going to increase. So if there has to be an adjustment made sometimes on the original water bill, maybe it was an error, but that has to be resolved. But those kind of things we would consider before we would take somebody to the auction if they're having a legitimate dispute and it's documented.
So that's the show
That's
cause.
a small percentage. That's a very small percentage of individuals.
So that's the show cause. Show cause.
We have hearings at Coble Hall, and in late January and early February, and we usually have 400 to 500 people a day.
Okay, so now what are some of the measures?
They come in and say, "What can we do? We're behind." We have 2 programs, and we also work with nonprofits like the Legal Aid and Defender, and we also work with tenants.
Okay.
If you're in a property, for instance, and you say your landlord isn't paying their taxes.
And you're paying your rent.
You're paying rent.
Right.
And you want to know, what should I do? I saw a notice on the door. It says that the house is being foreclosed, and the owner, so-called owner now, is losing the property. So should I pay rent? Well, we have a nonprofit, United Community Housing Coalition is there, and Legal Aid. We have a group of people. We can send them to talk to that group, and they can give them there some legal advice on what they should do.
Quick, I mean, what should someone do in a situation like that? Should they?
We won't give legal advice
Oh,
to them.
okay.
But we'll refer them to the nonprofit,
between
which
me
says,
and you, between me.
which says the nonprofit will say to them, "Look, maybe you stop paying rent. Put it in escrow.
Okay.
You know, if they try to evict you, then you have an escrow account that will help you."
But if they're being foreclosed on, should they even have the ability to actually evict anyone from the property? That's interesting.
They won't. They'll lose their interest once we actually foreclose. As of March 31st, it technically is foreclosure.
Okay.
So if they're trying to collect rent or evict someone after that, then they have to. The judge will say, "Well, do you own the property still?"
They have to demonstrate proper proof of interest, right?
Demonstrate they still have an interest in the property, and the person who's renting also has to demonstrate they're making a good faith effort, maybe by putting the money in escrow.
Well, you know, that sounds like it would make sense to put it in escrow to demonstrate, right?
That's another small percentage,
Right.
the tenants.
Okay.
We have a lot of tenants who are concerned because they're concerned that they're paying rent.
What about senior citizens? Are there any special programs to assist seniors who are on fixed incomes? And even with the assessment, there should be something. But like you said, you have nothing to do with assessment. Nothing to do with assessment.
We have 2 programs mainly that will help anyone. We call the stipulated payment agreement, which is a payment plan to stretch the taxes out. You pay 20% over 5 times. And usually your last payment is made in October, but your first payment is made. So you have 60% paid by early or middle of June. That way, that probably won't go to the auction.
Okay.
And then you can pay the other 40%.
But that agreement or that payment plan has to be entered into by what time?
Well, it should be entered into in March, but if someone comes and does it late, they just have to pay more. Instead of 20% in March, you're paying 60% in June.
Oh, okay.
So that's
because those timelines for foreclosed on a property, those are solid.
If you don't have the 60% by June, your property automatically goes toward the auction.
In auction, we're going to talk about that right on the other side of the break. Eric, before the break, we were talking about the various programs that the Treasurer Office have available for property owners who find themselves in a position of having their property foreclosed on. These programs are actually to assist the property owners before you actually get to the point of having to auction their property.
Right. Now, the one I didn't talk about was distressed owner-occupant extension. This is not a monthly payment plan or 5 payment plans before October. This is a plan where a person doesn't have the money to pay regular. They can pay everything by the end of December.
Okay.
See?
Okay.
Well, middle of December, I think it is.
Okay, and there's a criteria there.
It's a criteria. It's mostly based on income. They fill out an affidavit saying they're owner-occupants only available for this program.
Okay.
This program is for owner-occupants who say that their
Which means
income
not
is
rental property.
not rental property, not commercial property, not apartments, just owner-occupant. They can say, look, I live in this house. I can't afford to make these monthly payments. I can't afford to make these 5 payments that you have stipulated here in the agreement. I want to be able to pay everything off by December. I'll make my own payment plan, basically, is what it is. But we warn those who sign up for this program that interest and penalty continues to accrue on the unpaid balance. So if you can make the better situation is when you can make regular payments and knock that balance down,
Absolutely,
so you can save money in the long run.
So now we wanted to talk about the auction that's taking place in October.
I know we only have a few minutes.
Absolutely.
But the auction is we had our first auction last week. The minimum bid is all the taxes that are owed on the property prior to 09 and prior, 10 and 11, 2010 and 11. That was the minimum bid. We sold almost 900 items and for 16.5 million, I believe, close to that. And we have a second auction coming up with over 20,000 properties. The minimum bid is $500.
Okay, so minimum
registration, the deadline is October 12th.
Okay.
And the auction begins October 19th through 26th. After the September auction, all the taxes and liens are extinguished by law. So that's why the minimum bid starts at $500.
So $500. So you said approximately 20,000 properties.
20,000. Most of them in the city of Detroit.
Wow.
They're throughout Wayne County, but approximately 90% of the properties are in the city of Detroit. And there are some good properties. But one of the things we want to talk about in the auction, it's an as-is auction. People refuse to read some of them. It's as is.
Okay.
We make no representations as to the condition of the property. They go on Google Earth and look at the 3-year-old pictures, and then they buy a property that's burned, and they want to come in and cancel the sale. But the auction, it says you lose your deposit if you cancel the sale.
So the value or what you're looking for those properties are based on what's owed.
It's $500 minimum bid.
Minimum bid.
That's it.
Okay, and then folks just bid from $500.
Right.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It's a minimum bid, $500. So it starts at $500. But you have to look at the properties. You have to know what you're bidding on. Because if you go and you bid on something, I thought it was a...
So it's $500 for anything?
The minimum bid is $500.
Wow,
It could end up being higher than the September auction minimum bid based on the competition. We have people bidding from overseas, Paris, France, Australia, Dubai, all over the United States, but most of the people who buy properties are from Michigan.
Well, look, I appreciate you coming on the show, sharing this information with our viewers, and we're going to continue to contact the Treasurer's Office.
Can we give the website out here?
Quickly.
Yes, www.treasurer.waynecounty.com.
Well, I want to once again thank you, and we're going to continue our conversation with the Treasurer's Office to get this information out to our viewers. I know of no safe repository of the ultimate power of society but the people. If we think them not enlightened enough, the remedy is not to take power from them, but to inform them by education. That's what we hope we do here each week on the Jonathan Kinloch Show, educate you and inform you on all of these issues. So until next week, have a great week.